In this episode of Carpe Diem.
In 2015, 1 in 5 Canadians aged 65 and older, or nearly 1.1 million seniors, reported working during the year. Today, we're discussing working Zoomers.
Carpe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
In today's episode, we're talking working Zoomers. But first, Leah Bolton meets a playful one.
6,000 kilometers of ground covered on his unicycle last year. Dal is our featured zippy Zoomer, and he's only 70 years young.
Hi, Leah. Do you think you can keep up?
Yeah, no problem. I'll just keep running while you get your exercise here. I'm doing all right, actually.
Yes, you're doing very well with all that. The last 4 years, I've done 22,000 kilometers, so on average, 5,500 a year. Last year was a particularly good year, 6,000 last year and 7,000 the year before. As of this morning, I checked, and this week I'm number 2 in the world for distance. The number 1 guy is in South Korea.
Wow, okay.
Can I have one picture, man?
Sure, you can have a picture. So, one would first get up on the unicycle, and again, normally it would be a smaller one, and then steady yourself, and the first thing to do is practice keeping the unicycle underneath you. Perfect, good shoulder you got there. Great, how's that? Okay, I'm gonna ride away. And then when they learn that it's somebody that's 70 that thinks they're 20, they're just plain laughing. At one time I did 107 kilometers in a day, which is my personal record for distance in a day. But nowadays, just around here, I quite enjoy doing 30 or 40 kilometers a day just as a leisurely ride. Hi, Leah. The best place to learn is along a railing, perhaps such as that one, and you go along the railing doing what you can. Okay, it takes practice, but you're just going to keep that wheel under you.
Or keep my arm on the railing here. In the meantime, if you have a Zippy Zoomer to nominate, don't forget to nominate them at zippyzoomer@carp.ca. This is not as easy as it looks. Woo!
Dal is working hard at his hobby. Now, let's talk working Zoomers. Alex, what does your research say about older working Canadians?
Well, what I found is that we've got people that, or HR that have been surveyed, they have identified some fairly stereotypical concerns, but what's even more positive is that their responses have shown that there's a lot more positive aspects of hiring older workers than there are the negative. And that's the part that I want to focus on and really get HR to focus on.
I believe that all of that has a fundamentally legal component as well as a practical component. And that's what I'm seeing in my practice, which is an increase, I think, amongst older individuals, workers and employers, in a knowledge of and awareness of the law as it applies to their right to work and the right to work free from discrimination and the right also to be accommodated with respect to any limitations that might be related to their age.
Interesting, because when I hear from CARP members, I really hear two things. On the one hand, I hear many people who say, I don't want to retire. My work is enjoyable and makes me both used and useful. I like that. I want to have a purpose. But we hear from others who are perhaps in 55 or 60 and say, I was let go from work. I think it was age related, and I'm having a heck of a time finding another job.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the challenges mature workers face.
Still ahead on Carpe Diem.
Older people work a lot. They work a lot later in life now than they used to.
Carpe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
What if you're an older worker looking for a job? Does your age help or hinder your search? Why are there over 1 million seniors still working in Canada?
I just met a man the other day. He's a retired
high-up government work, he's got a pension of $8,000 a month. But some people have $8,000 a year. They have to work.
Older people work a lot. They work a lot later in life now than they used to. Used to be retirement at 65.
We heard money and community were two important and motivating factors. What else makes us look for a job?
I think the idea that a lot of your identity is mixed up in your job. Once you retire, or you've been either chose to retire or forced to leave work, or felt like you were forced to leave work, your whole world, your identity, your purpose in life really is impacted. And for some people, they've planned ahead, they know what they want, they move into it, it's a smooth transition. For other people, they're not ready.
And, and it's a lose-lose situation, because we have people that have experience to contribute, and knowledge and skills, and can really help make a workplace as effective as it can be. And at the same time, with people living, potentially 30 years or more after retirement, there's a really significant need to continue to increase that nest egg. And of course, every year you're working past 65, you're not drawing down on those retirement savings. So that's significant as well. And yet sometimes workplaces can be hostile for older workers.
From an employer's perspective, a lot of it has to do with the economy, and a lot of it has to do with the changing needs of employers. Older employees, perhaps a stereotype may not be true, but there is a stereotype with respect to older employees' knowledge of technological issues and computing issues. Perhaps extra training is required in order to bring them up to speed, it is thought. There are many more reasons.
And we hear that as well. In fact, I think there's some stereotypes out there. If an organization is downsizing and someone has to be let go, what we hear from our members is they're being told, you're pretty close to retirement anyways. You're probably ready to go. We're going to let you go. Or, this person here has a young family. They really need their income. So we're going to let you go because you should be ready to go. So this idea of them being replaceable and expendable is there for sure. And then we hear language in the workplace that really makes it ageist. For example, people hiring and saying, we want a digital native, or we want somebody who's got skills in a particular programming, which may not even be necessary for the job, but just precludes older workers who weren't around, who weren't taking their schooling when those programs were being developed.
I just heard you say the word ageism. Let's take a look with Leah Bolton. Is there ageism towards older workers?
I've been unemployed for a year, and I'm looking for something that I really want to enjoy, and so here I am.
Is it tough to find work?
It is, especially when you're over 50. I think it's really tough. And now I've turned the big 6-0, and it's even tougher.
Really? Do you think it's easier for the youth?
It is. It is.
Why do you say that?
For some reason, I think some employers think that they're going to stay longer, but I think adults like my age would probably stay longer.
Seems that as an older worker, you need to work twice as hard to get even considered for a job. What did the HR team say to you?
So when I did the opinion survey for HR, some of the concerns that they brought up, which you heard in the clip, are things like that people won't stay as long, that the younger workers will stay longer, that they're probably close to retirement. Ironically, it's probably the opposite that's true. Younger workers are more likely want to climb very fast. There's other things like the technology. That was the number 2 concern on the list of HR, was that people would not be up to date with all the technology, that they're slow on it. The very first concern was that it was dexterity and the stamina of workers would not keep up to the pace and demand of the workplace.
I've heard from some of my older employees and also older employed clients that they have, in fact, looked at difficulties or overcome challenges in the employment setting, or been able to deal with any kind of criticism, be it constructive or otherwise, from the employers in a much more constructive and adaptive way, so that although they may not be as efficient with the task itself, they will not be as easily sidetracked, they maintain their focus, and they are more stable in that sense in many cases.
When you have clients come to you and they've lost their job and they think, well, this is because of my age, is that really true?
Well, it's a rare case indeed where you will find an employer actually admitting that any kind of termination or reduction in pay or demotion has anything to do with age. And the reasons for that are obviously the law now as it pertains to human rights, and ageism and the protections against that are notorious. And employers are, I think, loath to create any kind of an expressed impression anyway, through their expressed words, that it has anything to do with anything that they are actually doing. But at the employees, on the other hand, I think that they have a feeling about why things are happening because they know that they haven't changed their performance. So why all of a sudden is this happening?
Here's something that's really great. Mature workers can add a vibe to a young workplace. Watch this clip of Robert De Niro as he goes back to work in the movie The Intern.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
When I'm 80.
I graduated from Penn. I have a business degree, but I never seem to do anything right around here. And you're like 50 years older than me, and you're deaf.
I happen to think you do a lot of things right.
Look and learn, boys, because this is what cool is. How in one generation have men gone from guys like Jack Nicholson and Harrison Ford to...
Carpe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
Welcome back. We went out and asked for your thoughts about older workers.
Because I know if I own a private business and somebody's making me money for years, 30 years down the road, this gentleman's not making me money anymore, I'm going to want to retire that person.
Employer expectation. You got to understand that, they're probably not going to be as productive.
Some mixed feelings, some kind of, age gracefully and are still useful, and some maybe stayed a bit too long and perhaps have overstayed their usefulness. I hate to put it that way, but.
Alex, you just did some research at a human resources conference. What did you find?
Well, I found that some of the concerns that have been expressed are fairly common among HR, human resource people. But I also found that two of the main bonuses or benefits I see of hiring older workers was one, the number one was strong work ethic and a conscientious, mature approach to work was what they really appreciate of an older worker. Number two was can serve as mentors to younger workers. And so there was a lot more expressed on the positive aspect of hiring older workers than there was concerns of hiring older workers. So that gave me a lot of hope that people are really realizing the real benefits and flexibility of this workforce.
I think we really need to change the conversation. Like, rather than focusing on what do we do so that we don't end up with our asses in court, why don't employers start looking at, what can we do to make this a really welcoming and positive place for older workers? I think it's heinous that workplaces can stop covering people's health and dental benefits at 65. That needs to change. And often pension policies and companies are also really regressive, so that they're almost incenting people to retire at 65 when what we know is that they have much more to contribute.
Unfortunately, there are a number of ways that an employer who wants to achieve those kinds of outcomes can still achieve them with a little bit of what's called dismissal planning. With 2 years' notice, an employer can change virtually any term or condition of employment. By hiring younger employees to replace older employees, they can save a little bit of money in salary and justify it, and helps them do it. So there is a problem there as well. And unfortunately, that also results from a perception, again, a misperception that older employees will not be as valuable as time goes on, but that is a misconception.
I'm glad you said that, because we went and asked you, why hire a Zoomer?
I think they're very conscientious. I think they're hard workers.
I think they're disciplined. I'm always served well whenever I'm served by an older person.
Knowledge, I guess. You know, probably help the younger ones to realize what they should do at the job and that type of stuff.
The experience is definitely the valuable part. You know, you find, you know, and you know, a lot of older people, they're more, you know, they're more dedicated to their work. You know, it's, you know, easy. It seems like we're ready for work every day.
Alex, we're ready for work. We're not out doing something that young people are doing. We're actually enthused and available and concentrate on work. That speaks volumes for why people should hire Zoomers.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people should be hiring Zoomers. One, we've been talking about a gig economy, and where work will be in small parcels and will be part-time or seasonal. So there's a lot of opportunity to hire a Zoomer who has that flexibility, especially if they've got a pension coming in. They're the people, not the people trying to raise a family and pay rent. So that alone, plus the transferable skills. I was just at a conference last night, or a workshop last night on tech. There were startup companies that were talking about the challenges of their HR and stuff like that. And I was thinking, these are young 20 and 30-something people that are doing these startups. I was thinking, you know what? You need a Zoomer in there. They've gone through all this before. They could help you with that organization. You can contract them in even to help with the HR complex questions. They're ready for that type of thing.
There is a huge concern also regarding competition, post-employment competition, restrictive covenants. Older employees are less likely to be transitional and moving from one job to another. The grass is always greener is not necessarily an adage that they're going to be living by, which is something that you have to watch for with the younger entry-level employees.
One thing I hear from our members is, how do I get a job? If I'm 55 or 60 and I've been downsized, what are the things that our members can do to increase their likelihood that they're going to be rehired?
A lot of people don't realize that the Work BC employment centers that are out there are actually available to, we don't have an age limit. You can walk into a Work BC center and you can get help with your resume, your job search, because job search has changed since, if you've been in a workplace for like the last 25 years, where you don't go to the career section of your newspaper anymore. So there's a lot of tips that we can provide. A big part about it is letting employers know availability is huge. Reliability is huge. I get told by employers all the time, availability, reliability are the two biggest things that they're looking for. You need to be able to speak to that. You need to know how to talk about your transferable skills and the assets you bring to that workplace. There are so many things that we can do to help make somebody be an ideal presentation to an employer, but you have to come in and say, I need some help.
We'll be right back, but first, more of your thoughts on senior workers.
If they need to work, let them work, right? Everybody needs to earn a living. You can't take that right away from a person. So, and if it gets down to the point where they can't take care of themselves anymore and they're actually not productive in the workplace anymore, well, then maybe it's time to get out, right? Maybe there should be a program in to help those people get out.
It's definitely unfair. I mean, you got to realize that if it wasn't for the older generation, the younger generation wouldn't have anything to work with to begin with.
Carpe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
It's now time to go around the table for our panel's final thoughts on older workers. Alex?
We have a shrinking youth cohort. There's less people in that group. The growing cohort is the older worker. So employers will have to start to tap into that market if they want to hire. The other thing is the customer base is also growing older. So businesses that want to tap in and make that older customer feel more comfortable, is also going to be looking at hiring the older worker, recognizing that connection that they have. The thing with HR in human resources and the businesses themselves, they do have to start to say, what do we need to do to attract the older worker? What can we do to have those shorter hours available? Or to look at what are we asking them to do? Can we ask them to do it differently? And that means accommodation sometimes. How can we also tap into all the talents that they bring, rather than just saying, oh, you're going to just be doing this, when they have more to bring to the table.
I agree with what I've heard, and I think that it's just wonderful that I think the law of late and legislative changes of late and the decisions of the courts that interpret the new legislative changes are reflective of those changing values. And they provide, employers need to remember, legal incentive to create policies in their application and interview and job marketing processes to ensure that older employees get a good opportunity to take the job opportunities that are available. Policies that also allow for more flexible hours and more flexible medical leaves and more flexible terms of employment are also policies which will position the employer in a much better place in the event of some sort of a complaint against them for some sort of age discrimination that may well be ill-founded.
Employers need to not only recognize the value that older workers bring, but make workplaces places where they're respected for their vibrancy, their vitality, their knowledge and experience. Governments have a part to play too. Right now, too much of our tax policy incents employees to quit working. We need to incent them to stay in the workplace where they can be used and useful and great contributors. And finally, employees themselves of all ages. We need to get rid of ageist talk. It's not okay for there to be jokes in the workplace about people having seniors moments. Instead, we need to be respectful of seniors and recognize that all older workers have an incredible gift to give their value to the workplace.
I want to thank you so much, Ash. Thank you for being with us. Alexander, thank you. And Wanda, always a pleasure to have you with us. That's the show. Remember, as our CARP president, Moses Neimer, always says, the best way to keep going is to keep going. So stay zippy and Carpe Diem. Seize your day.